You're listening to World College Radio Day. I'm Jared Tauber from 90.3 WMSC at Montclair State University.
And I'm Amanda Cunningham from 98.5 WNUW at Newman University. We're sitting here today with a multi-Grammy Award winner, music and comedy legend, and a college radio alum, Weird Al Yankovic.
Welcome back to College Radio, Al.
Great to be here.
Woo!
Whee!
How does it feel to be back in college radio, I guess, in quotes?
It feels pretty good. I mean, I loved my college radio days. That's where I first got my start. That's where I first took on the name Weird Al professionally. That's where I recorded my very first single. It was across the hall from my campus radio station. So I have very, very fond memories of KCPR San Luis Obispo. And it feels great to be back in college radio.
Yeah, it is definitely a unique environment to be in because it's all learning. I wanted to start off with such an interesting question. You were an architecture major at the California Polytechnic University. And, college radio is normally where communication majors hang out. What drew you into college radio being an architecture major?
Well, I've always enjoyed, music and comedy, and I was a big fan of the college radio station. I grew up in LA, and I remember as a kid, I would call up KHJ, like the big AM station in town, to try to win anything, and you couldn't even get through on the line. It was like always busy. And even if you got through at all, you're like the 5,000th caller. And I remember the first time I did a contest on KCPR, they said, call in right now to win a free album. And I called in and I got through and was like, yeah, you're calling number one. It was like, oh, a small market radio. I love this. And I was a big fan of the station. It was very free form. KCPR got very, not commercialized really, but they got very formatted at one point. But when I first started listening, it was a very free format station. It is now again, I'm told. And I just really enjoyed that, and I liked the freedom of it. And my sophomore year, I studied and I took the FCC test. I don't even know if you need to do that anymore, but back then you did. And I got on the air, and I started midnight to 3 in the morning doing the Weird Al Show.
Speaking of your hours, which were quite unconventional, I actually have a quote from your former program director at KCPR, Brian Hackney. He had this to say about you. Quote, "That man, even when he was just 20, had more energy. If you could have hooked up electrodes to him and sent it 14 miles away to the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, you could have lit up the Central Coast." End quote. As an architecture major at Cal Poly, you pulled many all-nighters studying and doing projects, but still found the energy to put on the Weird Al Show, Saturday nights from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. How did college radio motivate you to find that power within yourself each week? How did you do it?
Well, it was just my joy during the week. I mean, as an architecture major, they called it architorture at the school because it was a very difficult major, and most of the students didn't sleep much. But I made the time because those 3 hours a week on the air were my happy place. That was when I got to forget everything else and just have a good time. And it was such, it was stress relief, and that was really what got me thinking, like, why am I spending my life learning how to do something that doesn't make me happy when these 3 hours a week being Weird Al make me happy? So it really was like my oasis in the middle of a very difficult week to just have fun.
And be Weird Al.
I definitely resonate with, it's like your safe haven, essentially, being behind that microphone and just doing your radio show and, just doing something you love so much. And being on the radio in a college radio station, it is a learning experience, as I mentioned earlier. And the motto for Cal Poly was actually learn by doing. And that sentiment rings true for college radio and could be the most important aspect for the students who are trying to gain real experience in a semi-professional environment. So how did your experience at KCPR inform the way you approach new things today?
Well, it just encouraged me to try things out. I mean, I think I grew a lot. What you said before is very true. I mean, I developed, a lot of my personality in college radio. If you listen to like my first air checks compared to when I was, kicked off the air, there's quite a bit of improvement there. And I mean, having said that, even those later sound checks are not great. I mean, I have much better memories than what the reality is. I heard some air checks not too long ago, and I thought, yeah, not that good. But at the time, I was very confident that, oh man, I'm really killing it. But no, my experience just taught me, that you can, improve yourself, learn new things, and be experimental. I mean, back then, college radio was all about, just being experimental and trying different things out and seeing what works. Some things do and some things don't, but that's all part of the process.
Is it true that you started every show with "You Light Up My Life" by Debbie Boone right before cutting to B-52's Rock?
Not every show, but that was kind of a common trope. I would start the show with some very kind of soft rock, put you to sleep kind of music, and play about 30 seconds of it, and then scratch off the record and go into some like new wave song to wake people up.
Well, you gotta at that time. Of course, you didn't seem to have any issues. But it's no secret that you became Weird Al at Cal Poly. You even recorded your first single, My Bologna, in Studio 229 of the Graphic Arts Building, also known as the Men's Bathroom. And the Weird Al Show was a radio program at KCPR before it was ever on TV. Looking back at all of that, what does it mean to you now to be an ambassador for college radio?
Wait, is it official? Am I officially an ambassador?
We're calling it right here, right now. Now you are.
Well, I'm obviously very honored. College radio meant a lot to me at the time, and it still does. And I try to be supportive, however and whenever I can. And the fact that I'm now an official ambassador means that, yes, I will salute you, sir. It means the world to me.
That's awesome, especially, it's almost coming back to your roots with college radio, and now you're an ambassador, so that must be such an overwhelming feeling. But
what kind of perks do I get as an ambassador? Do I get like a free lunch at the dining hall, or how does that work?
We all have to use the porta potties outside, but you get access to the private faculty restrooms and parking.
Yeah,
okay,
parking.
Good to know.
Yeah.
But you said college radio is, experimenting what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And some things, go well, some things don't. That's what it's all about, right?
Uh-huh.
And college radio is, students are almost encouraged to make errors because, it's a safe environment, and then they learn their skills there to bring with them into the real world. And over at KCPR, you were almost infamous for breaking the format, which unfortunately led to your removal from the station. Now, what advice would you give to young disc jockeys today who are trying to develop and create their own identities in a world full of rules and FCC guidelines?
Well, it depends how far you're willing to go. I mean, if you're looking at your job as a disc jockey as your livelihood, you may not want to risk getting fired. So I don't know what kind of advice to give here. I mean, if you're a student at a college radio station, I think you probably have more leeway to push a few boundaries and push the envelope and maybe see what you can get away with within the confines of taste, I suppose. But I think if you're doing it for a living, you have to also live in the real world and understand that management may not like you doing a few things.
College radio has been the foundation of many artists' careers over the decades, but a lot has changed since the late 70s. Instead of playing the B-52s and Talking Heads, we now play Phoebe Bridgers and St. Vincent. Instead of record players, we now have automation systems. And, saddest of all, instead of radio, there is Spotify. In a time when music discovery has become so much more instant and accessible, why do you think college radio still matters? Why do I matter? Why do we matter?
Well, college radio stations are, they're not homogenous. I mean, they're very different. So it's hard for me to say, make any kind of, blanket claim about college radio. But in general, I think that they're still fairly free form, and it's a place where you can try things out. I mean, you mentioned, I kind of miss the old days of turntables at college radio stations, because one of my favorite things to do is to start playing a record and then take it out of gear and then keep playing it with my finger and see if people could tell if there's anything wrong with the speed, because it would get a little faster and a little slower, and just kind of playing with people's minds. So that's the kind of thing you really can't do on commercial radio. There are a few things that you can get away with in college that you can't if you're on terrestrial radio, and getting paid for it. So it's a place to have fun, it's a place to learn, and it's a place to just try things out. And that's why I think college radio continues to be very important.
At the very least, these days our program directors aren't making us play the Lemon Pipers or Green Tambourine.
Good. So there's improvements happening.
Yep, I can say we've come a long way.
In a good way, yes.
In a great way, I might argue.
Yes, in a great way.
In a fantastic way, I might even say.
Good.
I think Jared and I are both very curious for this question. What would be your perfect playlist as a college radio DJ in the 70s?
Lemon Pipers and Green Tambourine? I'm kidding.
Well, I wish I had a playlist in front of me to pull up and show you, but back in the late 70s, I was very into any kind of power pop or new wave. My favorite groups were people like, Oingo Boingo and B-52s and Devo and Talking Heads and things like that. And then just, Dr. Demento favorites, just anything that would like kind of wake you up or confuse you. I liked subverting people's expectations and doing like jarring segues, going from something very mellow to something like extremely, aggro and in your face. Yeah. So I try to do anything that just kind of like shocked people, without being gross or graphic, but just kind of like knock them out of their complacency and forcing them to listen.
Yeah, keeping them on their toes while listening to your program.
Right.
I'd like to take a moment to dive down into the vault of old college memories. This ought to be a throwback.
Okay.
Who were the Valencia All-Stars?
That was just me and my friend Joel Miller, who I'm still friends with to this day. And he lived in an off-campus apartment complex called Valencia. Actually, both did. So we were never roommates. That probably would have ended poorly. But he lived literally right next door. And our band was just the two of us. I played the accordion, he played the bongos, and we called ourselves the Valencia All-Stars. And I think we played 2 gigs. I don't know. We played a couple gigs at the local campus coffee house. That's pretty much it. And we went on stage and did our stupid music, and people actually liked it, which was probably the first live performances I ever did in front of an audience, and I got enough positive reinforcement to keep going, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, performing live, definitely being on the radio must have kind of prepared you to perform in front of a live audience. But one last question before we let you go. What is one piece of advice your current self would give to your former self just getting started in the college radio?
I would say wait until Apple, Pixar, and Google are offered publicly, and then buy as much stock as you can. And then use that to build a radio empire and rule it with an iron fist.
Wonderful words to live by. I think everybody should definitely
I'm going to get it tattooed on my face.
Yeah.
That'd be a good look.
Well, where? Here, there, or you know what? Just all over.
I think spread it out.
Right. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. Maybe a letter on my toe, one on my pinky.
Yeah, that'd work.
Well, Al, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it.
This was really a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, such a great time talking to you. And for those listening at home, happy World College Radio Day. And remember, college radio is resilient radio.